My wife left me and took our toddler halfway across the country to live with my mill. My wife took our toddler to visit my mill for a 2-week vacation while I stayed at home and worked. My wife has been depressed for years now, and I noticed that she seemed happier with her mom, and I ended up suggesting that they stay and visit longer before coming home. My wife decided to come home instead, but mentioned that we needed to work on things. I agreed, and when she got back, we discussed what needed to change for her to be happy in our relationship. At the same time, I was given an ultimatum that if I didn't change these things, she would leave by a certain date, which was about a month and a half away at the time. I honestly felt like that wasn't much time, especially given that one of her conditions was that she needed to feel like I really loved her and was willing to put her first. Regardless, I was willing to work on our relationship because I really do care about her, and I want her to be happy, and I put myself to work, trying to be a better husband. A week went by and things seemed to be improving, even to the point where she got excited about the idea of making a treat in the kitchen together. We hadn't done that in at least a year, but it used to be something we would enjoy doing together semi-frequently. The very next day, as I was getting home from work, my wife's brother was parked outside my house and was loading things into his car. He lives about 8 hours away, so I knew this could only really mean one thing. And sure enough, when I stepped out of my car, I was told that my wife was leaving, taking our toddler with her, and if I agreed to sign some separation papers, they would stay another night in a hotel so we could get them notarized. If I didn't sign, they would leave that night. At this point, I was in shock and didn't know what to think or say, so I agreed to sign the document. And yes, at this point I know I shouldn't have agreed to it, but what's done is done. They left the next day and are now living with my mother-in-law about 1,000 miles away. Now, an interesting tidbit that is relevant to the next part of the story is that my wife's brother is married to my sister. We'll call him Jim. We'll call the first brother Tom. Jim has recently been working in an extremely stressful environment and had to take several weeks off because his mental health was suffering so much. At one point after my wife left, I ended up calling my sister for support, but I didn't want to talk to Jim about it unless he wanted to be in on the conversation because I knew what an impossible situation he was about to be in anyway. I didn't want to try and get him to take sides or anything like that. Tom, on the other hand, had no such qualms about calling Jim directly and telling him what an awful person I supposedly am. Jim decided to record that phone call, and it was a doozy. He spewed lie after lie about me and about my family. Guess how well Tom knows my family? Not at all. Guess how well Tom knows me? Hardly at all. He has never liked me and never put in any effort to get to know me. Anyway, he said some terrible things about me and about my family. On a side note, I started going to therapy after all of this, and turns out that there are some very tiny nuggets of truth in what he said about me, which my wife told me later that she told him certain things and he blew everything way out of proportion. And I am now working through those things in therapy. The things he said about my family, on the other hand, just had no real basis in reality and were very hurtful. My sister says one thing in particular she will never forgive him for. Since then, it has been a roller coaster of emotions for me. One of my coworkers told me about a week ago that he had been worried that I might not make it at the company for a while there because my performance suffered so terribly, and I missed several days. He is no longer worried about that, though. I've started playing pickup sports when I can and working on making friends. I am also new to the area, so haven't had time to develop friendships yet. I am moving forward with things and getting back on my feet. Sometimes, though, like now, I just wish I had someone to talk to. My therapist is amazing, but once a week sometimes feels like not enough. I miss my wife so much, and I miss my kid just as much. My wife recently agreed to go to couples therapy with me, but only for the sake of being good co-parents, and she is not interested in a relationship with me anymore. That hurts something terrible, but I am glad that she wants to co-parent and do it well. We've had one session together so far, and it was honestly amazing, but I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much about it. ETA. Since a lot of people are talking about it, I have already had multiple consults with lawyers. I have been recommended to try and keep things amicable with my wife in order to make the custody easier and cheaper on everybody, and to wait to file a custody dispute until things become more clear. It's also better for the kid in the long run if we can do so. As of right now, I have been allowed to video chat with my toddler several times each week, and my wife seems to be allowing for more and more time on those calls. I will lawyer up if she starts moving the other direction, though. Also, no, it's not kidnapping. Custody was included in the separation agreement. A court order can override that if necessary, but for right now, it stands as is. Edit 2. To everyone saying there is a lot of missing context. Yes, there is. And no, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what my wife asked me to change, but more generally, I would put my emotional and physical needs above her own, and I used her as an emotional crutch throughout our marriage. She was the first one who ever taught me to regulate or process my emotions, but I never took it the step further of doing it on my own, and so I ended up putting a ton of extra emotional weight on her that she just didn't need. I have also been financially abusive. Again, not going to get into the specifics, but it's true. This probably doesn't sound reasonable, but I didn't even notice I was doing it. This goes to the comments about me not being self-aware. That is one of the reasons my wife stated that she left. This whole ordeal has been a huge wake-up call to me. And yes, I admit that I am probably still not aware of everything I have done that made her leave. For now, I am working with my therapist on both becoming more self-aware and processing my emotions on my own. I'm not addicted to anything. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, etc. So her leaving doesn't have anything to do with that. As far as I am aware, there isn't somebody else either. So if it's that, I would be surprised. She has also told me that she does not believe that I was abusive towards our child. But since I have consistently shown that I am willing to only put myself first, she is worried that I would do that to our child. I don't believe I would, but when I got married, I thought I would put my wife first. Clearly, I didn't, so maybe she has a point there. That's another thing I'm going to work through in therapy so that I can be a good dad. Ultimately, I do recognize that I dug my own grave here. I realize that my initial post doesn't come off that way, but honestly, there is still a part of me that doesn't feel like it's my fault, and that's the side that clearly came through while writing the post to begin with. And honestly, thank you to everyone who's calling bullshit where you see it, because I need to see it. Working with a therapist is great and all, but when you have me being so unself-aware, sessions are not as productive as they could be. For everyone who is talking about coercion in the separation agreement, I have been told several times that what happened with the signing of that document does not meet the legal definition of coercion. So any judge would probably laugh me out of court if that's what I claimed. The good news is that it doesn't mean that a court can't order custody differently. So thankfully, I didn't just sign away my rights as a parent. It does mean I will either have to get my wife to agree to something different, or I will have to get a court order. Hence, the suggestion to get on good terms with her because working it out between us will be much cheaper and less emotionally taxing on everyone than taking it to court. I am prepared to take it to court if she doesn't budge or starts to become less amicable, as I have already stated. Again, right now I still get to talk to our child several times a week, and my wife is opening that communication up more and more, so it seems to be positive for now.